Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of Triple Play. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to support those that support us, like Brooks Bible College. We want to thank them for sponsoring everything we do these days. If you're considering a good Bible college in the Midwest, look into Brooks. Their goal is to provide you with a great education, a solid biblical background. You'll be ready to preach the gospel, and you can do it without going hugely in debt. They want to get you out on the field. The average church size, 60 to 75 people. You hear me say that all the time, but it's true. I keep running into more and more people who are bivocational because they're trying to pay off $100,000 worth of debt and they're pastoring a small startup church, or even took over an older, smaller church and they can't do it. It's really a struggle because of the college debt. So consider Brooks Bible College, and they initially started as a lay Bible college. So if you're a lay person want to get more educated, another great place to check out. So, with that said,
Who do we have?
today we have Michael Treadwell. So I love the name because it reminds me of Jason Bourne.
Right,
The
nice.
minute I saw that name, that was exactly what came in my head. So,
Tread. Was it the
Treadwell,
Treadstone project?
yeah,
Or
the
something?
Treadstone project, yeah, and it just right there with Treadwell, Treadstone, kind of, I don't know, similar in a way.
It's a
Yeah,
solid name. So
yeah.
love it.
But that being said, I was put in contact with you by a good friend of mine, Major. So he said I have to get together with this guy. He is awesome. What he's doing in South City with this school is amazing. So I don't know a lot about you. I just know that Major like just went on and on and on about you, and I love Major. He is amazing. Shout out to you, buddy. And if he says I got to do it, that means I got to do it. So that said, tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, the good old St. Louis question, where you went to high school, and maybe how you met your bride, a little bit of your testimony, and then maybe get to your school. How'd you wind up being the head of this school in South City?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I was born in rural Texas in a small town called Eastland. And when I was 12 years old, we eventually moved to St. Louis. My father was a doctor, but he left medicine to work for Blue Cross Blue Shield in Missouri, and that brought us to the St. Louis metro area. And I wasn't born here, but I got here as fast as I could so that I could answer the high school question.
I think they should change it to what high school do you wish you
Ooh, I'd have to think about that one.
Yeah.
I do know what high school I actually did go to. So I went to Parkway Central High School. So I graduated right down the road from where we're sitting at the Queenie Park Ice Arena some number of years ago.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I call St. Louis home at this point. I moved away for a number of years, lived in the South and internationally for a while, and came back. And when I came back to St. Louis, I was listening to the way everybody talks, and I was like, why is it that everybody here speaks the right way? And then I was like, oh, it's because I must be home. And so I was like, so yeah, I identify as a St. Louisan. And how do I get to met my wife? My wife and I met in college at Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama. We both just had a lot in common and sort of living out our faith. And how do we do that really intentionally to take God's love to the nations? We were looking at being international missionaries when we met. Eventually did that together in the country of Ethiopia, where two of my children are from. And so that sort of quest of like, how do we live out God's love in different places is what ultimately led me to my job currently at South City Community School. Um, we were looking to live back closer to home with family support here after a number of years going different places, and found the school. And they were asking this question of how do we live out God's love through a school in a place that impacts a community? And then they were looking for a head of school at the time. And it was sort of this great convergence of calling and interest and a need on their part. And yeah, that was 7 years ago. It's been a great, great time.
So there's a lot there that we got to unpack a little bit. Ethiopia, how many years were you in Ethiopia?
We worked there for 5 years.
Okay, and what did you do specifically?
So my job title was I was the project manager of the Orphans and Vulnerable Children's Project for SIM Ethiopia. So SIM is an interdenominational Christian group that's been in Ethiopia for over 80 years. And so they have done a lot of different ministries in their time there. My wife and I went to work with their HIV/AIDS ministry, which started in the early 2000s as a hospice ministry that was helping people die with HIV/AIDS and sharing the gospel with dying. But then in the mid 2000s, the US government approved PEPFAR, which is the President's Emergency Fund for AIDS in Africa, which sort of changed the game in places like Ethiopia, where it was people living well now that they have HIV/AIDS. they could get access to antiretroviral drugs. So then you need things like tutoring programs and community centers and social workers to help kids stay in school when previously they or their parents were dying. Now they're living, and then they need to overcome sort of like living with this terminal illness. So that's what we went there with SIM and a group called Mission to the World and a partnership, all that.
How was it?
It was great. I mean, it was definitely life changing for us and for the communities there. I think just seeing Ethiopian Christians, American Christians, British Christians, Korean Christians all work together under SIM towards a common purpose, in a place as diverse as Ethiopia. You've got over 80 language groups in Ethiopia. So it was really just a testament to what God can do when people of different tribes, tongues, and nations work together to care for their community. And I think it really just shaped the way my wife and I think about the world and leadership and family. That was really impactful on it.
Wow.
Did you guys pick up anything as a maybe downtime or go back to?
I mean, certainly. So, I mean, I have 4 children, 2 Ethiopians by adoption, and then 2 biological children. So we tend to celebrate Ethiopian holidays. So, like Ethiopian New Year's is on September 11th or September 12th every year. Ethiopian or Orthodox Easter is different than Western or Protestant Easter. We live right down by Mescarim Restaurant on South Grand, and so we eat a lot of Ethiopian food out of Mescarim on South Grand, and try to incorporate that into our family's culture.
Yeah.
It's really cool. And I mean, it's kind of cool because you got 2 and 2. How has the meshing of those been?
Well, ask my kids when they're adults. They'll that'll be the true judge.
That's true.
I think for us as parents, I think one thing that we have felt strongly is you love the children that God gives you, right?
Mm.
Whoever God puts in your family and who you're able to care for. And so I think for us as parents, it's just been exciting that God has put 4 beautiful, unique children that all have beautiful and broken stories. And we get to tell them that story and invite them into that story that God is writing through them. And yeah, in our family, it's in a bit of an atypical way for, you know, white American parents that grew up in the suburbs. But I think that makes it beautiful in its own way, just like every family is differently beautiful.
I love it. I definitely love it. What, you know, your testimony, how'd you come to know Christ a little bit? You know, were you young? Were you older? What kind of led you to that? Did you grow up like in a denominational church? Just a little feedback on that.
Sure. Yeah, I grew up in a multi-generational Southern Baptist family. And my particular story was I spent a lot of time at church, and I think it was really good formation for me. But how I responded to that, my sinful heart just got being really mean about being really good. I was going to be right, good, and I was going to let you know that I was better than you. My 7th grade Sunday school teacher, I would make her cry because I would tell her that the Bible stories were repetitive and boring and stupid. And so, yeah, I think I had a real bitterness about the faith because I was around it so much. And it was really in college, I feel like the idea of grace really came home to me. I had had some friends that I had been doing ministry with at Samford University confront me and say, hey, you're really good at doing the acts of what one would say as a Christian, but you have no joy in your life. And a Christian needs to have joy in your life. And they just really pointed me to the stories of Christians that had met Jesus for his forgiveness for their failures. And the idea that we're all just like failures in progress was revolutionary to me because I had definitely picked up on the moral teachings of Christianity, but I hadn't yet been able to understand that Jesus loves us as we are and then begins to help us truly change and not just be really good people, but want to be really good people, maybe even more important than the actual doing of it.
Love that. Love it. Amazing to me every time I hear somebody's testimony how God works in the lives and hearts of people so differently and so vastly. And then, just like you said, over in Ethiopia, can bring all those brokenness together to accomplish so much greatness for the kingdom.
He's good, so we just got to keep showing up and seeing him do it.
Amen. So give us a little bit of background of the school. How did it start and what's the mission? What are you guys all about?
Sure. So the school started, there was a small group of people that were moving into the Tower Grove area in the mid 2000s. In that time, St. Louis public schools were unaccredited and charter schools were not yet a thing in St. Louis City. So they began praying and wrestling with, okay, we're Christians, we're trying to start churches here in the city, and how do we love our own children and also love our neighbors around us? So they felt called to start a Christian school that served their own children and also other children that they might be in relationship with there through their churches in the city. They were also fascinated. They wanted to have something unique and different as a school. And so they came across this educational philosopher who was a Christian named Charlotte Mason. And so they really said, okay, we're going to be a Christian Charlotte Mason school in the city of St. Louis. And that's where today we'll talk about our three C's, right? If we say what makes our school special, I'll say to school parents, if you want to find a school that is Christian, that is trying to live out a Charlotte Mason education in the city of St. Louis, there's only one. So that's what makes us unique. And then our mission statement talks about being an intentionally accessible Christian school in the city of St. Louis. And we say we offer a feast of ideas that prepare students for the next academic endeavor. And we talk about ourselves as
That's awesome.
The grades.
yeah. So the grades, so it's pre-K 3 through 8th grade.
Okay.
This past year, we just graduated 20 students who went to 10 different high schools all over the region. And so as we have grown, it's been really exciting to see students get up, give a graduation speech, talk about how Christ and appreciation for the world around them has shaped them as they're heading off to diverse high school.
Awesome. Are you guys looking to expand in high school at all? Is that a future thought?
So not right now. I mean, there's been the founders back in the 2000s thought about would we ever be a high school. Right now, where we are as a school is we have become 2 classes a grade. Next year, we'll be adding a 4th grade class so that we're 2 classes a grade all the way up through 4th grade. And right now, our board is working on how do we continue that growth of 2 classes a grade all the way through 8th grade. I think a few years from now, would we look at that high school? But let's get a 2 classes a grade.
Oh, that's great. And you mentioned, a lot of people from different churches. Do you got like sponsored churches that really are involved in this school?
Sure. So first, our families come from over 30 different churches, and then some of them identify no church attendance. So they're just interested in a different type of education, or they may value faith formation, generally speaking, but they may or may not be Christians or strong church attending families themselves. But then within that, we have 7 partner churches. And to be a partner church, we talk about shared values of generosity, leadership, and families. So any church that's trying to make an impact there in that part of the city around Tower Grove Park that wants to see, a city does not renew without generosity building a community, right? Families, right, are integral to the growth and renewal of an urban area. And then it takes leadership to see those things thrive. So those are the conversations we have with our partner church.
I love that. Awesome.
It'd be interesting to see if there's any more interest in school hours, just based on the recent news of going on in the Catholic Church and some schools around town and closures there.
Yeah. Well, something that I talk about a lot at the school is there has long been a tradition of faith based education in the city of St. Louis, right? And we have Catholic education, we have Lutheran education, and then we have different Protestant schools. And we have Tower Grove Christian Academy right across the park, which is another excellent school. But most of the overall trajectory of that has been one of decline and has been a lot of change, right? As you've seen in the news. So oftentimes we're talking about how we want to be a story of growth and renewal as a part of that story, because I think the city would be worse off if there were no faith-based schools 50, 100 years from now. So we're trying to be there for that future and work with other schools who are trying to push back against real challenges who also want to do.
Sounds
Well,
like you're doing that.
exactly. I was thinking, and I actually was thinking with what you've had COVID, there was a whole lot of things that came out of that really, the eyeballs of parents started changing, especially those in the faith world. things that they didn't realize were being maybe taught or even pushed through public education, political agendas, because most people want their kids to go to school and they're not really wanting them to be quote unquote political, right? So political agendas. And so I'm wondering, out of that, did you guys see, like, from 2020 to now, like, a growth because of some of that as well?
Sure. I don't know. You'd really have to ask our parents why it is that we've been growing. I think we have seen a pretty consistent 6 to 8% annual growth in enrollment every year going back to about 2015. So for us, it's been pretty consistent. So I hope that's more out of not being the best kept secret anymore, whereas more people find out about the school, that it is a quality, different experience that's coming. I mean, in the pandemic year, the second year of the the 2 years of the pandemic, we certainly got people who were interested in the school because we were in person the whole time. Um, but I don't know that that was a huge boom to enrollment or shifter of our population in long-standing ways.
Okay. Wow. Good. Good. How about your students? How are they doing academically as they leave? Are you guys seeing a lot of success out of that? I mean, obviously you've been around long enough now where you should, maybe see some success on that. So,
Yeah, so our oldest students are really just now sort of juniors and seniors in college. I mean, and we have like 5 of them. So, that early generation, they're all doing well and succeeding in college. I just talked to one of our dads at one of our partner churches, and his kids are succeeding as schools as diverse as UMKC, University of Louisville, and different schools around the Midwest in different programs, be they computer science or pre-med. So that stories from our graduates. We have a graduate who talked about the school and the love of learning as they went to, I believe it was Colgate University, is where they are now as a freshman, and just saying that. So a phrase we use is the love of learning is sort of shorthand for like what Charlotte Mason is trying to inspire in somebody, that you should want to learn simply because learning is good and valuable in God's good world. So anyway, one of our graduates talking about that in their admissions essay to college, again, is just a real sign of success for.
great. Hey, Charlotte Mason, tell us a little bit about her, because you've brought this up a few times and her style of education. Can you give us a little bit of background of what that style is or what that kind of means?
Sure. Well, historically speaking, so she was contemporaries with Sir Baden-Powell, who founded the Boy Scouts, right? So, like, that's sort of the time in the world where she was thinking up her ideas. And what she was interested in is that, at the time you had British elites who were getting like art, literature, exposure to the natural world, all these things, but they were doing that through a system of private tutoring. And she was interested with the idea, again, it's the Industrial Revolution, and saying, no, this should also be for the working class, for coal miners, for every different class of society should receive a feast of ideas, like a rich education with poetry and thought, the best ideas from the best minds, as we would have said. And so similar dynamics, right, in modern American education, where you still have segregation for a lot of different reasons within the quality of school. And so we as a school are looking at that and saying, okay, what does that mean in 21st century America? How do we bring a really excellent education and bring that to, a refugee family that is resettled in South City, or, a family from a higher income level that's living in South City? How can those two have education together that's a really high quality, points to Christ, and also values the natural world outside, really good books, and
Well, kids, I mean, do they gotta, like, what's tuition like? Is it expensive, or is there scholarships available? If somebody's listening, they'll say to the podcast and they're interested and they live in that area and they're going, hey, I want to get my kids enrolled. What would they do? So,
sure. Well, go to the website, check us out. There's an inquiry form. You can set up a tour, come and sort of see what we are. All our tuition information is out there on the website.
What is that website?
So,
Say it off.
well, I always just Google it. I always type in South City Community.
It'll pop up that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
guess what? We'll put it up on the screen
we
while
will.
we're talking right now, so
Okay.
they'll have that, and it'll also be in the show notes, so it'll pop up while we're talking.
Yeah.
A few times.
Should be www.sccommunityschool.org.
Okay.
So I passed the test.
Okay.
but-
There you go.
But yeah, so we talk about accessible, not affordable, because anytime you're sacrificing for something for your children, whether it's a additional help that they need through a tutor or therapy, or like a really advanced sports team. I don't know any parent that looks at something and says, "Oh man, it's just so affordable to get this awesome experience for my child." Right? We're investing in our children, and so we talk about access. And so we do that through need-based financial aid, where over 20% of our budget is set aside to meet 100% of a family's demonstrated financial need when they apply for financial aid. So we have families that pay down $1,000, $1,500 a year because that's what's accessible to their family, all the way up to full freight is almost $10,000 for middle school next year. So again, it's just trying to tailor that tuition to where a family can have access to kind of education.
Yeah, I love that. That's a good approach. So what would you say if somebody came and said, "Tell us about South City School"? What are the things? Obviously, you mentioned the 3 Cs. Is there anything that you would like add to it, to the pitch of why they should consider it?
Sure, I would say families turn to us when they are looking for something different. So most of our families did not grow up in Christian schools or private schools. Um, some of them grew up in the city, some didn't. But the reality of the city of St. Louis is just like we started this. Like, where did you go to high school? Right? That is, we live in a region where the climate is about educational options, right? That define our identity, right? And so then bring that down to elementary school in and near the city of St. Louis. And yeah, there's not another Charlotte Mason school. And so that's something that is very different. It's very unique. There's not Some Christian schools will only serve Christians, some serve Christians and non-Christians. Not all Christian schools are pulling from multiple churches, right? Some are just within one denominational tradition. Those are all good and right things, right? That a school can do in line with. But we have a unique experience there for our students and our families where we're putting a lot of those things together. Um, so yeah.
And I would bet a very good cultural blend because of that too. Went from several different churches.
Yeah, I think it definitely creates a unique culture because there's a real high value on relationships, and it's people that are not always in relationship with each other naturally through their other circles of life. So it gives us an opportunity to have conversations around, okay, why do we do it this way? Or we will have families that are driving into the city from the county, and families that in their entire life is the city. And so that whether it was in the pandemic or now, they're just having conversations around, oh, where do you live? Why do you live that way? And so it just really gets to those deep and meaningful conversations as parents are interacting with each other through events at the or getting to know their child's playmates.
As the head of the school, is there maybe something that's really changed in you during this time as you've been in charge of it? I was just thinking that would impact me as I'm around all these students and stuff. Is there something that's maybe impacted you, or a story that really stands out in your time there?
Probably the most impactful thing, me personally, is every year at graduation, because we started so small, there's this tradition of every graduate giving a speech about how the school impacted them. What's beautiful to me is that some of those kids have been there. Some of them came as 3-year-olds and have never known another school, and they talk about what that's going to mean to them. And some came in their 8th grade year, right, and have just been there 1 year. But to listen to them, and some of them talk about their faith in Christ and how that's shaping them. Some of them don't talk about that, right? But they talk about how they've been in a loving, nurturing environment, or an environment that they feel has prepared them for the high school of their choice. And so when I see those moments of students telling their own story of preparation and formation in line with the values we're trying to promote as a school, it just gets me every time. It's like that's why parents are sacrificing and investing, is so that their child can be shaped in a particular way. That's why our teachers work long hours, sacrifice. That's why our partners give, is so that that student can have that life-changing experience and then go on and live a little bit differently than if they had attended any other elementary.
Sounds like what you're doing is you're softening the soil, hearts. whether it's at school directly from you guys or at some point where they actually hear softening.
Yeah, I think that's the goal. I mean, when I started my career, I was an elementary school Spanish teacher, was my first job. And people don't often have high expectations for students coming out of elementary school, second language or world language classroom, right? Because what do you say about what does the average American say about the Spanish or French or Latin or German class they took in high school? Oh, I took a year of language and I know nothing about it, right? But what that formed in me was okay, well, you can give a student a positive emotional experience where they feel known and loved and challenged around a particular topic, something like another language or another culture, so that later in life, when they bump into those things, they think, oh, I learned about Peru. I like Peru, right? And they're going to be more inclined to love their neighbor who is quite different from. And then so then that has sort of formed the way I think about the school is, yeah, we're going to tell them about Jesus, right? And hopefully do that in a relational environment where they walk away with that same positive emotional experience, whether they embrace Christ now or not, but they walk away. And as God pursues them throughout the course of their life, that he will bring them to himself.
Well put. Well, you've covered an awful lot. Is there anything you had on, anything you want to say about this school? I mean, I'm sitting here taking all in. I think it's great. We need more Christian education, more options for people. City of St. Louis definitely, I don't want to say it's depressing, but it's certainly been on a decline for quite some time. And to see bright lights in the darkness of a city like that, an urban area, I love it. I was blessed to be able to do ministry down there for several years, and we've had some of my past youth on here, and oh, and amazing stories when the gospel is able to be presented in a good way, in a tangible way, by just loving on them. So
Yeah. No, I just think we're working on just getting the word out about the school because the most frequent comment I get is, "Oh, I've never heard of that place." And so you guys are helping with that, and I really appreciate that. And then I think beyond that, as Christians, right, when wherever we're doing hard work, we're tempted to be like Elijah, who says, "God, I'm the only one left in this really hard situation," right? And we know what God says to him. Hey, there's several hundred more that you don't know about, right? So I think something that we're often praying is like God's people are doing his work all over the world in all kinds of hard places in the city of St. Louis and in the county of St. Louis, right? And I think that our school would be praying that we would get connected to other people who are trying to care for kids' educations in life-giving ways, be that in public school or private school, and just to build that work so that kids can receive a quality education wherever they are. I'd love connections if you're listening and think that there's somebody we ought to know. That's how this conversation started with Major.
yeah,
How I met you guys is who else do we need to know? It's something that I'm really working on this year ahead.
I love it. It is. Well, thank you for stopping in and sharing all that with us. And for those listening, if you're wanting to jump in, you want to support, you want to find out more information, you want to get in touch with Michael, we'll put their website on there, and you can always reach out. But their website will be on the podcast; it'll be in the show notes. And Michael, we appreciate you stopping by. And anytime you want to, come back and tell us a little bit more what's going on in the school, we love it. So
Yeah, we take updates.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for having. And yeah, just good to meet you guys. And yeah, look forward to our next conversation.
all right.
Coming, Mike.
Well, hey, thanks for checking out everything. Don't forget to support those that support us, like good old Annie McCallum with Resource One at 636-458-1798. Chris and CS Design at 573-436-3717. And Jeff Earhart Agency, 314-821-5333. Or Jeff, and you might just hear my co-host Scott over there answering the phone occasionally. And it's great to have you back, Scott.
Thank you.
All that said, we'll catch you guys next episode. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey.
You're safe.